Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Catholic Talk Show. Today, we're going to be talking about what it's actually like in the seminary.
That's right. We're with two former seminarians with different outcomes, and we're going to take a look behind the wall of the priest factory. You know, how are priests trained? How do men become Catholic priests? What do they learn? What do they experience?
So if you'd like to learn more about the most important school in the world, stay tuned.
All right. Yeah,
I looked into my camera.
That's
right?
right.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
okay.
that's perfect. Yeah. All right. Good to be back with you guys. Yeah, important topic. I think I get that question sometimes when I tell people I was in the seminary.
Yeah, we have a lot
They
of.
usually say you?
I did.
Well, we have a lot of young men who are discerning the priesthood, right? And I think there's a lot of, number one, misunderstanding about what actually happens in seminaries, but also a lot of really important things that Catholics should know about how priests are trained, so they can really understand what priests are able to really help them in, right? Because it's a pretty extensive training program, as you guys both know. So before we jump in, click the like and subscribe button. It's the easiest way for you to participate in the mission of the Catholic Talk Show. Only takes a second, but when we look at our analytics online, over 75% of the people who are watching this statistically right now don't take the 2 seconds it takes to scroll down and click that subscribe button. So make sure you do that, and we really appreciate it. So guys, you guys were both in seminary, and you were in seminary together.
Yes, absolutely. Ryan and I, what were we, 3 years, 4 years in the seminary?
Two.
2 years?
Exactly 2.
Seemed like 4 years.
Yeah. We were young.
No, absolutely. So yeah, we crossed over for those 2 years. For Ryan exited, I continued on.
Yeah,
That's
He
right.
found his awesome vocation with
Yeah.
marriage and family life, and I continued on to the priesthood. So yeah.
So I think that's a great point to start, right? Because a lot of people think, look, you go into seminary and you're signing a lifelong contract.
Right.
You walk in those seminary doors, you cut off your family, you get dressed in black, you start hitting yourself with the Bible, and all of a sudden the Pope, you're now the Pope's, employee, right?
Yeah.
And that's not the truth of it. And as Ryan, as you have shared a lot of times, is that seminary has incredible value in and of itself, not just because what percentage of men go into the seminary and actually make it all the way through, in estimation?
Probably less than half.
Less than
yeah,
half.
you're looking at 40% or something, probably, of the guys from start to finish.
Yeah.
They'll discern out, or they'll be invited to leave, or seeking their vocation somewhere else. And it's always said that that's not a failure necessarily. That's the process doing what it's supposed to do, because you want to make sure. The reason why seminary takes, for me, it was 6 years after college. I graduated college, then went to seminary. So 6 years of this ongoing formation for the sake of knowing, all right, can I be certain that this is where God is calling me, and also the formation towards that end, as well as being a priest. And then for guys that discerned out, absolutely, that's some of whom are still my best friends, who are living their lives. Yeah, Ryan right over here, living their lives and their vocations as saints and really great men in the church. And a lot of it can be tied back to, hopefully, at least in part, to what they learned in seminary.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's that, look, every outcome of the seminary is a success, right? Whether you go through to be ordained or you discern out. Because seminary is a discernment process. It is not, you're not signing the contract. I mean, I'm sure there's outlying cases, but the men who discern out, that's the proper end for what they were what they were going through. So
Yeah. The church has gotten a lot better at, in my opinion, explaining this to young men and going on retreats and giving them the understanding that this is not only a formation program, but it's a discernment process. You have people that are put in your life in, practical formation areas that allow you to really experience what discernment's really like in your vocation, which is very important. And so, yeah, I mean, the foundation that I got in the seminary, I still carry with me today, and I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah. So, Father Michael, number one, what is seminary largely, and what are the stages of formation? Because it's not one single program. There's different levels. Is that correct?
Right. So really the seminary system as we have it now really comes after the Council of Trent. So we're looking at 16th century. There was lots of different ways that men were formed to be priests throughout the whole history of the church. A lot of time it was basically like an extended internship program, where if a man who has an aptitude for theology, for philosophy, for liturgy, for the Lord, would be invited to say, hey, maybe you should discern being a priest. And so they would kind of be formed in that way. So what they discovered is really in the 16th century, St. Charles Borromeo and other saints too, that kind of said like there was a lot of priests who were becoming priests who didn't necessarily have the education that they needed to be able to answer the tough questions. The Protestant Reformation had just happened. Just a few generations earlier, the Black Death had
wiped out all the priests.
Wiped out most of the clergy of Europe, and so most of the educated class was impacted during that time. So there was a lot of some kind of superstitious things happening in the church, and a lot of people have pointed out those areas. So the church kind of saying, how can we have a systematic education of men, and all those levels, obviously intellectual education, so you can be grounded in philosophy and in theology, but also as it came to be developed into the modern world, what we see now is seeing those areas of our own human formation and development, like what it means to be a good person, to live in community with other people, to have just those basic skills of communication and of engagement with others and of leadership that are so important. Obviously, spiritually, to be formed spiritually, intellectually, and then pastorally too. So those four areas are kind of the main areas, that the human formation, the spiritual formation, the intellectual formation, the pastoral formation are kind of the building blocks for everything that the church, all rooted in a man who is being called by Jesus. And I think that's always important to recognize, that a seminary is there to form people, men, to be closer to Jesus Christ, who are discerning, being ordained priests of Jesus Christ in the Catholic Church. So it's a man who has encountered Jesus and who is formed as a disciple of Jesus throughout their whole time. Hopefully before they get to seminary. I hope it doesn't start, it doesn't just begin there, but their own encounter with Jesus is growing and being sharpened, and throughout that whole stage of formation, all the stages of formation.
Yeah, and there'll be variations, right? For religious orders, they'll have some specifics. How religious orders, Jesuits, I know they go like 12 years, they go much longer. Or Dominicans, there's going to be differences, but in general, at least for diocesan priests, that's the rough map of what happens. So you have your propedeutic year, which is a newer thing, right?
Yeah, they just came out with this. This probably would have been something that...
This is a fun word. Propedeutic's a great word.
Ryan and I would have probably benefited from, which is basically like, I mean, the church instituted this a couple years ago, for the whole universal church. So any guy that goes into a seminary now is going to do a propedeutic year, which is basically a year. It's not a year of classes. Usually they'll have some sort of, if you're reading through the Bible or doing, reading through the catechism or something, but not rigorous college level classes. But it's kind of a detox year. It's really? And what they're discovering is that guys coming in, I mean, so many guys have just been inundated with the world. They're not necessarily growing up in a lot of times family life is kind of broken down, as all of us have been impacted and affected by, and they've been out in the world, whether they've been students or been working, and so just kind of to change that mindset towards the depths of formation. It's a year of learning how to pray. It's a year of going on retreat. A lot of times guys will do a poverty immersion. We just had some guys from diocese up north and down here doing a month-long poverty immersion where they're working with the poor. So these sort of things that kind of help people to kind of get detached from where they were in order to a bit more freely enter into the time of seminary. So I think it's a brilliant move by the church to have this propedeutic year, and it's really it's mandated. It's because I think it's important, because sometimes you can be like, oh, that's a wasted year. Because seminary takes a long time. That's one of the things whenever people, when you're in seminary, they're like, how long were you in seminary? And I'd say 6 years. And then like after, I graduated college, then went to seminary. So it was 6 years. And now would be even longer. Yeah. They're like, what do you do for that time? You're like, it just seems forever. It's like being a doctor. And it's like, yeah, it kind of is that. Absolutely. It kind of is that. But looking at this and said as a year, not a wasted year, but a year. Well, maybe it is a wasted year. A propedeutic year is a year wasted with the Lord, where you're just kind of falling deeper in love with Jesus and maybe sharpening that call before you get into the busyness of academics, which you're about to dive into, because the rest of seminary is going to be a lot of classes, a lot of learning.
So then after that, let's call that the tempering. That's when they take the little priest goldfish, they put them in a bag and then put them into the tank first, right? So they can get used to the water temp. Then after that is college seminary, right? So that's where philosophy and general education, getting them up to standard. Now, you guys, is that what you guys were in together?
We did a program of basically like 4 years of philosophy in 1 year. I mean,
Okay.
more or less, because we both came in with college degrees.
Okay. Is there a difference? So, like, you have to come up to a certain level of education?
Yeah, so some guys will come in without any college, so they'll do their 4 years of college at that philosophy level. So they're getting a degree, usually a degree in philosophy. They call it I think of the discipleship phase is what it's called now. So you're being disciples of Jesus as you're learning to think, and that's really what those 4 years are. I got a degree in history in undergrad. What did you study in college?
I don't know. Bachelor in science or
Bachelor
something.
of science. So you're a scientist then.
Yeah.
So he was a scientist.
Still
yeah,
is.
he was working for NASA.
As a rocket engineer. No, there's also cultural significance too in seminaries, like across the world, right? Like I think in our seminary, being in Florida, because there's a large Hispanic community, it kind of went both ways where, you know, the English-speaking seminarians would learn Spanish, and then there was actually an English-speaking second language program that some of the guys had to go through and pass before they entered into even being able to study some of the philosophy. So there was there's a lot of dynamics in the educational part that had a lot of wisdom behind it to get people ready to study, and along that line get them into, you know, the linguistics or the languages and the areas that they're around.
Yeah. So that's a you know, for guys coming in with some college or with a college degree, then like you go through a propedeutic year now, then you would also either finish your college degree, get a degree in philosophy, or do years of kind of catch up on philosophy, where you'd get that program taken care of. So, because what the church would say is before you get fully into the study of theology, is they want you to have that foundation in philosophy.
And that would be the major seminary.
Theologate would be the major seminary. So which is interesting, because I think a lot of people maybe in other denominations or other things, that might be one of the things that they might not have a lot of experience of, is that philosophical foundation. But I mean, for me, it was great just having for us that year just dedicated to the nature of thought and metaphysics and what it is to be and what it is to think and to have an idea and to formulate arguments. So much of that was so essential, and dialoguing with great philosophers, obviously great Catholic philosophers, but a lot of non-Catholic philosophers too, including, you know, atheist ones and ones that shaped, you know, the modern and postmodern philosophy. Was really just so helpful, continues to be so helpful for me, and just having conversations with people and learning how to now as I'm a priest and I preach and share and teach. So I'm often drawing on what I learned in philosophy to learn how to articulate this in a way that somebody can understand.
Yeah, it kind of helps you with, like, even now, like with first principles, when you're talking to somebody, like, to understand where they're coming from in the conversation, because, you know, they have like a principle that they're using, or their ideas are coming from, or their suffering is entering into something that you can kind of ground yourself into and see in somebody else that, you know, you might want to not have done otherwise.
Yeah, I can recognize that training, that you have that training in you. And I'm always surprised. You're like, oh yeah, I read, you know, that's like Plato, or that's like Aristotle, or that, you know, like, and you have a lot of, I don't know, I guess, pretty good and deep knowledge of philosophy and how to treat people. And I think that's probably from that training, right?
It changed my life.
Yeah, that's
like,
amazing.
and it's like the first day, he's like, I'm going to tear down everything you've learned and build it up. And I'm like, who is this guy? Like, why would he even say that? And then, you know, at the end of, you know, the class, you realize, like, this guy is like going to help me a lot.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. To me, what was amazing when I started studying philosophy at the it was a college seminary that we were both at in Miami. And I'd already graduated from Florida State at that point and got my degree in history. But I really felt like I hadn't received an education until that point. And it was really kind of like, in a sense, a lot of those streams of what we'd call like an authentic liberal arts education, or authentic, like, learning how to think, learning how to dialogue, learning how to appreciate art or music or beauty or goodness. A lot of that I felt my education up to that point, this might have been my own fault too, had been so kind of segmented and so kind of detached. One subject had nothing to do with the other. Kind of seeing how those all came together in a nice philosophical stream, and then that set us up to before we studied theology. So anyway, I feel very grateful for even that short amount of time I was at the college seminary.
Yeah, I think a lot of modern secular colleges, at least since like the 1950s, right? You go there and it's really about getting a degree and it's about getting into a field and it's about the return on investment, right? But
Yeah.
for all, going back to the founding of the University of Bologna, the first college, right? And Oxford and all these, it was really about human formation. And I think modern colleges have gotten away from the idea of forming humans, forming thinking, and really turning it into a degree factory. It's more of a business proposition.
Right. And what all these people, I included, don't understand is like if you look at like a liberal arts education like Thomas Aquinas College that Jen went to, I went to one of her reunions and I'm sitting down with the assistant attorney general for Michigan. I'm sitting down with one of the chief cardiologists in research for all these. And what they all said is that when they went to colleges after having this liberal arts education and no like formal training in biology or law or anything, they were widely accepted because of the way that they were able to think about what they were engaging into, right? Instead of just passing a test, it's like I went to one of Jen's oncologists and it was just like she was passing a test to me, and it's like, you could tell there was no underpinning.
It's transactional.
Right. It's transactional, but there's no underpinning. Like, I think that's the unitive thing that we all got in the seminary and studying philosophy. It's like it united all these streams and flows of thought at a base of human understanding, right?
So then some of the things that you'll typically study in a seminary. So philosophy, we've mentioned that, logic, metaphysics, ethics. Sacred scripture, right? Yes, us Catholics study scripture.
Yes.
It happens. Dogmatic theology, moral theology, church history, canon law, homiletics. You got to know how to preach, obviously. Pastoral counseling and psychology, which I think is something that a lot of people don't understand the level of training that priests actually have in that and how much you use that in a pastoral sense. And then liturgy and sacramental theology. Is that about it?
Yeah, there would be some sometimes languages, obviously. We were the seminary in Miami, St. John Vianney at College Seminary, and then the Theologate, so St. Vincent de Paul, which is a regional seminary for the state of Florida, where we both were. We're both bilingual seminaries, so learning Spanish as your pastoral language, or for guys that are Spanish speaking or from another area of the world where they're learning English. Latin and Greek when they're offered. I was in Greek for a day, and unfortunately I was able. My schedule was kind of bonkers, so I wasn't able to stick with Monsignor Basso too. It would have been great, but I was able to take Latin with Bishop Raymond Lassard, who's the retired bishop of Savannah, Georgia, who was a professor down at the seminary. Who had been at the Second Vatican Council too, which was pretty. Yeah, it was pretty. He was great. So. I joked my Latin was always terrible, and I was always, just kind of struggling, just to remember the basics every single time. But
my kids know more than me now.
Yeah. Yeah, my Spanish is pretty good. My Latin never really took off.
Spanish is just spicy Latin anyway.
That's right.
So here's a question I think a lot of young men or people or even parents would question is, what is it like? Does it cost money to get in seminary? Who pays for it? Like if you drop out, to like, okay, well, you're not going to be a priest. Here's the bill for all your education. How's all that work?
Yeah, so a lot of people don't know. So you don't just go to seminary. You don't just like apply to a seminary. You apply if you're thinking about becoming a diocesan priest. You apply to a diocese. Okay. So like usually you'd go to your parish priest. Hopefully they know who you are. If any guys are thinking about discernment or thinking about priesthood, make sure your parish priest knows who you are. Make sure you're getting involved and serving and starting to use your gifts in those ways. Because then you go to every diocese has a vocations director who's going to help guys with those initial steps of discernment and asking some of the practical questions. Sometimes you think if someone's like, I just want to give everything to follow Jesus, and it's like, all right, well, you got $200,000 of college student debt, this loan or something like that, or you have this other thing, or you have obligations to your family, or you still have a girlfriend and you haven't told her about this.
Wasn't there a guy that you guys went to seminary with that was married?
Yeah, they found out right before. I believe he was ordained a deacon or something.
In another country was married, and it was a whole.
He was my neighbor in the seminary.
Yeah. Wow. So they try to do their due diligence, but
sometimes it's hard.
Sometimes it takes a little time, especially when it's coming from maybe a country that doesn't keep as good records. And So, yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, it's not
Because
good.
we will find you. No, but just those practical aspects of the actual application process are not unimportant, because it is kind of, the thought of, I'm going to step out as someone's working right now, and then they're thinking about the seminary and they're stepping into that. And then I have to let go of that job. So like I got to let go of this branch to get over to that branch, And so the most dioceses do here in the United States do a good job of supporting those guys in that transition and financially supporting them as much as possible. You're not going to be making a lot of money as a seminarian, but usually healthcare is taken care of, and usually a small stipend or something like that. I think I was making like $100 a month when I was seminarian, so I was a big spender. It was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I've heard, and there's a lot of organizations out there that will help with this, that student debt is one of the biggest obstacles for people getting into seminary, because they're like, I went and got a $250,000 degree on Sanskrit art, and they're like, maybe I just go be a priest and kind of wipe this out. It doesn't work like that. So there's a lot of groups out there who support seminarians in that, being able
even
to raise
like
that money.
Jesus calling the apostles, they were, tax collectors, they were fishermen. There was a dynamic there of even Jesus, like taking them through this discipleship and eventually becoming, the apostles.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So who are some of the people you meet in seminary? Like, who's in charge of the whole program? Like, who are you responsible to? What are those people like?
You're responsible to everybody when you're a seminarian. So
that's right.
So that is what is one of the interesting aspects and it's a tough transition. I'll say this, especially I graduated college before I went to seminary, and Ryan did as well in something. He's not sure what it was, but we had some sort of degrees, and so you're an adult. I hadn't been living at home since I was 17 years old, and now 21 and go down to seminary, and then it's all of a sudden now you got because we were in a college seminary at the time too, so it's a little more rigorous as far as rules, because you got guys that are 18 there, but as far as rules, as far as there's a curfew and lights out, and it's just sort of wait, what happened? So all of a sudden that you got people that you're responsible to. So the head of a seminary is the rector. That's the official church title for the principal or the headmaster, or
so the rector is he's the guy
dean,
in charge.
Yes. And then you have usually a vice rector, and then other people in other positions of authority, because it's simultaneously it's a school and a house of formation too, and some places will separate those, like some of the seminaries in Rome or other spots where you have your house of formation, where you're living, where you're in community, where you're praying together, and then you go to a place for your classes. Most seminaries here in the United States, at least, combine those two things. So it's kind of a structure of like a school, so they'll have a faculty, and you'll have a lot of priests that are on faculty. You have and then they'll have different functions within that, religious men and women, and then lay professors too. So you have a lot of theology professors and other fields.
Yeah, and it's all guided by a board. Boards are usually comprised of bishops and some advisors to make some of the decisions, and the rector is usually involved in those. And so there's a very collaborative process to sort of drive the initiatives that they come up with. And I think they do it pretty well. You could tell it was kind of unified in that sense.
Yeah, and there's things, so as far as kind of governing documents, obviously the scriptures, the teachings of the church, but there's specific documents from the church. The Ratio Fundamentalis, I think, is one of the latest ones from the church that kind of gives the template, the framework for seminary studies for years. The guys will spend. Those are tweaked and adapted in different regions and different areas of the world, because obviously it's for the universal church. It's one of the things that people don't always think about, is that the Catholic Church is universal. So 1.2 billion Catholics around the world. I think of all the seminaries all over the world, and including here in our own countries, we have a lot of seminaries here. So in a sense, we have governing documents, and then the application of those documents. Each bishop's conference in each country is going to have their own sort of ways of engaging with that.
Yeah, and I don't want to stress too much on the rigor of it, because we did have time to play. One of the things that surprised me the most about the seminary is it was kind of during that crisis in 2002, and I'm driving there and I'm like, I don't know what kind of people I'm going to meet. Yeah. And I get there and it's like all these young guys, we're all playing basketball, throwing elbows at night. And that, we always look forward to the social aspect of it, and sometimes we got a little, overboard, but it was fun,
Yeah, absolutely.
as well, because like one of the things that I appreciate the most is that, I had friends in the Catholic Church, young adult groups, and I'm still very good friends with them. But there was something about this incubator we were in with each other and our love for God and willingness to give our lives to God in the priesthood and that vocation that like gave us a bond that I think, it has lasted forever.
Absolutely.
And all the guys that, I became friends with, you became friends with some priests, some not. But that was a very special thing too, as well, because you're all striving to at the same time. It's not like going to a school and saying, I'm in class with all these people and this guy doesn't care. He's going over here, like more of a secular college. It was like, there was a unified like vision for all of us and why we were there and helping each other along in different age groups. And there's older guys, and it was pretty cool.
Who were you paying to write your papers for you?
Oh, you couldn't do that back then, man. We had a computer lab. I was like looking over, like he's only on page 3. I'm on page 5, so I'm gonna go play basketball.
But there was that, even when it came to this aspect of so a little bit of a like kind of boarding school, almost kind of like you're all living at this place and you're all working in the same direction. And then that I think also highlights the fact that at the very heart of this is probably what most people think we do all day at seminary, which they think we just pray all day at seminary.
Right.
Like there's a lot of prayer. I mean, prayer is the lifeblood of everything you do. The liturgy of the hours, which is the official prayer of the church, the 5 hours a day. That's going on. Mass every day, holy hours, rosaries, devotional prayers, retreats, or usually you're having like at least once a month, you're having like a day of recollection and then an annual retreat of five
people
to 8
coming
days.
in and giving talks.
Yeah.
Bishops coming in and then they just, it's like impromptu, like, hey, we're all going to meet here. He's going to address us. Yeah. Pretty cool.
So what does a day in the seminary look like in general? Let's give me an average day in the seminary.
Man. All right. So, I guess, you're waking up probably waking up pretty early, and depending on how the schedule is, first thing is going to be morning prayer, then breakfast. The food's usually really good in seminary too. That's one of the things. Whenever I go back to like give, some lectures and things like that now. And I'm always like, golly,
Can't wait to eat.
yeah, I know. I'm gonna be here for
Chef
2
Philippe.
days and put on 20 pounds. But
Get that 34th button on your cassock.
That's right. So so you breakfast, and then usually you're on to class for the whole morning, and then if you have like a early afternoon mass, and then lunchtime, and then you might have more classes or apostolic work in the afternoon. Every once in a while there'll be some free afternoons. That's kind of rare though. And then evening prayer and dinner, and then sometimes you'll have stuff going on in the evening, talks or conferences or free time, to work on homework or just hanging out too. That's the other thing, like Ryan mentioned, that you've got. Usually you're going to have time where I was playing ball 2 or 3 times a week when I was in seminary.
And we used to have the most heated ping pong matches after
ping
dinner,
pong,
because we'd have some time after dinner. And we probably have 20, 30 guys in there
I've been
anytime.
beaten by Ryan Delacrosse, who was playing left-handed, like I was the Princess Bride or something like that.
He gets real aggressive at ping pong.
And so he just beat me with his left hand, which he's not left-handed, and it was just to
There
really
was 3
humiliate
players
me.
that would bring a crowd. It was Adel, myself.
He humiliated the entire country of Colombia one time just by his. So yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so those sorts of things again. It's pretty much full days, because and then sometimes you'll have like a house job where like I was always dish crew working on the dishes and stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's a home where you got 100 seminarians there.
Yeah.
You have another 10, 15 priests and people who live on campus, other people who are coming in during the day. So it's a pretty bustling little mini city that you got going on.
Now, do they ever let you out? Are you able to go watch a game? Yeah, go watch a movie? Do you guys allowed to have cell phones? Like curfews? You mentioned that. Like, what are some of those restrictions?
Yeah, or early on. So like when we first started, so that first year, and probably for guys that would be coming into like a propedeutic year now, that would be probably a lot more like kind of the curfews and other stuff too. For the most part, when you're in the major seminary and the theologate, it's a little more open, towards that, because you're going to be in and out for different things. A lot of guys are on the way towards being ordained, so they're working in parishes on the weekend or things. So there's less sort of like checking in, what time you got in last night. They might be checking in whether you made it to morning prayer that morning, and then if there's a connection between like, hey, you got in late that night and you're missing morning prayer in the morning. You're able to move around, but it's not unmonitored. Let me put it that way, because like they're constantly asking the question if you're preparing yourself for the life of a priest, which is really kind of saying, all right, am I willing to allow even my schedule to be dictated by other people and by other things, which is tough. It continues to be tough for me.
Yeah. People address you and lead you where you don't want to go.
Yeah, I'm 15 years in. It's so.
Yeah. Now it used to be there was the minor orders, right? Acolyte, lector, usher, exorcist, subdeacon. That was gone by the time you guys were in, right?
Right. Yep.
Okay.
We still there are a couple of they don't call them minor orders, but there are kind of like sort of steps towards this. So lector and acolyte would be the two main
that
ones
are still there.
that are still there. So becoming a lector, kind of being delegated by the church to read at Mass, and then becoming an acolyte, which is really delegated towards serving at Mass, being able to purify the vessels at Mass. So it's kind of those steps and things that you're going to be doing a lot of, obviously, as a deacon and then as a priest, that they're giving you some official recognition towards that. Before you make your oath of fidelity, and then you're ordained to what we call a transitional deacon.
So you don't make any vows when you enter seminary.
Nope.
No, you're not promising anything. I mean,
it's a good kind of standard practice. Say like, all right, I'm going to stick this out for the year. I remember when we first got to seminary, we had a gentleman. I don't know, I forget his name. God bless him. But we kind of all started together, like the guys that were in the in that pre-theology sort of program, who already had college degrees. It's like 16 of us, and then one of the guys. It was like a Friday, and I see him with a box. He's going out to his car. I was like, oh, and I'll say his name was Matt or something. I'm like, Matt's making a run for it. And I was just joking. And he's kind of like, oh no, I got to check some stuff out at home. And I was kind of like, oh, I was kidding, man. But he left. He had been in seminary for 2 weeks, and he's like, this is not my thing. And he took off, which again, you're free to do.
Yeah.
You can totally do that.
Yeah.
So obviously, like we said earlier, you're sponsored by a diocese who send you to a seminary. So in a sense, that would be the conversation that you'd have to have with your diocese and things. But yeah, you are totally free to walk out the door at any point. And but it is good to stick through for the calendar year, the school year, to kind of get through the highs and lows that are naturally going to be a part of it.
Yeah, and then there's the summer too, which usually are assigned at a parish, and I was assigned with another seminarian, which was cool. So we got to hang out, eat dinner together, and talk and pray and stuff like that. But I'm sure most people this past summer, had somebody in their seminarian in their parish, and that was always a good, like, I don't know, that was like a really good way for me to just see how the parish life integrates to what I'm learning, and it's pretty great process. I think the process is fantastic for discerning.
And there'll be other things like, so I had a Spanish immersion summer. Summer where I was a hospital chaplain as well. We did a spirituality program in Nebraska. Institute for Priestly Formation. So usually things that are the guys now all seem to like travel. Like I was on my sabbatical this summer in Spain. There was a bunch of seminarians there. I'm like doing their Spanish immersion. I'm like, you went to Spain for your Spanish immersion? All right.
Well, that's the rich diocese.
I know, seriously. So that's cool.
Like backpacking around.
Formation.
So at what point do you actually get ordained, right? Because I mean, I know, like you said, there's the transitional deacon, right? And that's when you actually are starting to make some promises, right?
Yeah. So at diaconate ordination, that is the moment that you make your promise of celibacy. That's your promise of prayer. That's your promise of obedience to the bishop. All those things are made there. You're actually ordained at that moment. So you're basically locked in.
You're locked in
at the moment of your diaconate ordination. Some people say like, well, aren't deacons married? And so there are married men who have been called to be deacons, and a lot of times we call them permanent deacons, meaning they're serving as deacons. Like my father's a deacon in the church. But once you're ordained a deacon, you can't get married after that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like my dad, if he were to become a widower, couldn't get married after that because he's already ordained a deacon. So
Yeah,
for
I mean, there's
yeah.
Catholic priests who are married.
Right.
You can be married as a deacon or a priest, but you just can't get married.
Right. Which
Same
is
way
always,
in the East.
always the misnomer that people are like, oh, they used to let priests get married. That's actually not true. So forever, married men have been called and are still in limited circumstances in the Roman Catholic Church called to be priests.
Yeah.
So once you're ordained a deacon, that's really the moment you're laying your life down, and then that last year of formation is all ordered towards. All right, you're a deacon. You're doing the things that a deacon can do as far as preaching, celebrating baptisms, sometimes weddings. You're blessing objects, which is cool. You're facilitating some liturgies, but all that's ordered towards that next step of being ordained a priest.
And you bounced out obviously before that, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Well before that.
Well before that.
Yeah, I have 1 year of theology and 1 year of philosophy. Yeah.
Now, what would happen if a transitional deacon bounces? I mean, that's a weird limbo state.
It does happen. It does happen. So they would need to be basically dismissed from the clerical state. So there is a process for that for guys who have been ordained deacons. They've made those promises, and then for whatever reason decide
Get cold feet.
Get cold feet. Yeah, it's big. And I've seen the church. Obviously it's hard. It's not an easy transition for them because in a sense you've been at that point for a lot of guys 6-7 years pretty intensely in a direction. But I know some good guys who've been in that spot and then get dismissed from the clerical state. So then they're now laymen in the church and still serving and living their lives and hopefully becoming saints. Because that's what they're still called to do.
Mm-hmm. And then when you have, how do you graduate? How do you become a priest? What does that actually look like? Is it like, okay, here's your degree in your college?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So depending on the seminary and stuff, so you an MDiv, Master of Divinity, is kind of the professional degree for a priest. Other seminaries will have, like there was at the time, at least when I was there, a Master of Arts in Theology, which is kind of like an extra program. I wrote a thesis for that and stuff. Some places are pontifical seminaries will have like an STL, Licentiate in Sacred Theology, or other things as part of it. So it is kind of funny because you actually do have a graduation, like because it is people who are degree seeking, sometimes lay students who are there which was always funny to me when the guys were the deacons, they're getting ready to be ordained priests in like a week or two. And they have like their graduation, they have the cap and gown and everything. And I would always tell the guys, I'm like, hey, man, this is gonna be the biggest day of your life. Walking down with 100 people there and just kind of receiving your valedictorian thing or whatever it is. But when they're about to be ordained a priest, for which is a huge deal. If anyone's not been through a priestly ordination before, it's phenomenal. I mean, it's one of the it's one of the great human events and divine events that you can be a part of. So that's obviously the end towards which is ordered. But the time in seminary formation usually will culminate sometime before that. Sometimes with diaconate, and then they'll allow that last year to be a year. They're calling this now with the new ratio. They call it a vocational synthesis year, where you're ordained a deacon. They spend basically almost a year in a parish, kind of being formed as a deacon, no longer in seminary.
What Jose?
He's doing a pastoral year right
now.
Yeah,
so we had dinner with him last night.
Yeah. So he's on his pastoral year. So the seminary that we send guys to in South Florida, kind of halfway through theology, they'll take a year in a parish, sort of an internship year, which is great. And it's great for us as a parish because it's great to have these guys and getting to know them. It's great for them. I really love when guys are getting ready to leave. They're going from their pastoral year back to the seminary, and they hate to leave.
Yeah, because they're really in it.
They love the people. They love the ministry.
That's it being a September call up and having to go back down to the minor leagues for the next season.
Exactly. Yeah. It basically is that. And so, but then it's just so cool to see how many of them, are when they come back, like Father Richard Graham is my associate pastor. He had been a seminarian here. He did his pastoral year here many years ago during Hurricane Michael, and then came back and now he's in his 5th year serving here as a priest.
He said every year is Hurricane Michael.
Well,
That's what he said last night at dinner. He's like,
there's different levels to that, but it is just really cool for them to get to know, because they've been in the class so much, they've been in so much to be able to give. So Jose, we have him. He's doing prison ministry and he's doing hospital ministry and he's giving reflections after mass and he's teaching classes and he's with the youth group and he's all over the place, and it stretches and pulls and pushes you, and it's great to hear. And then you realize, like, oh, these guys are smart. Like they've been studying all this time. Then you get to see them put it into action. Is really cool to see too.
Now I want to ask the dirt about the seminary too.
All right, here we go.
Now, but before we do that, because this is the hook, and everyone's going to stick around to hear the dirt. So now I've got you. So now you have to listen to me.
Are you going to blur my face for this? So I can answer
if you
it for
want,
okay,
I can do that.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, before we spill the dirt on what happens behind the seminary and all these salacious things that people think happen, I just want to let everyone know about our sponsors. Number one is Hallow. Hallow is the world's #1 prayer app. Billions of prayers have been sent to this. Millions of people use this app every day. This year, they've got some great programs for Lent. They've got their Pray 40 challenge. They're reading through Dostoevsky. They've got all sorts of sacred music. They've got your daily rosaries, your examens, night prayer. They have children's content. They have prayer challenges led by people like Father Mike Schmitz and Bishop Barron and Jonathan Rumi and
Sister Miriam.
Sister Miriam and Mark Wahlberg. Sorry, his name escaped me. I don't know how I forgot his name. I've said this a million times.
Jonathan Rumi.
The
Catholic Talk Show's on there as well.
We are, yeah. You can listen to the Catholic Talk Show in their podcast
It's
section.
an act of charity.
No, we have been with Hallow now for 5 years, right? And that's because we believe it. It's a great app. I use it every day. If you want to try it out for free, go to CatholicTalkShow.com/Hallow. You can download the app and see why so many people are having their lives changed by this app. The other one I want to tell you about is Everything Catholic. So Everything Catholic is a great website. They have every sort of product you can want, from candles and home decor and sacramentals. Check them out. We've been partners with them for a long time. They do great work, and they only support Catholic creators. They're not just buying stuff, out of warehouses. They're working with actual Catholic companies who are creating things for Catholics by Catholics. Check them out there. And then I also want to let everyone know, look, if you want to support the Catholic Talk Show, you can go to CatholicTalkShow.com/Patreon. We don't ask for a lot of money. We, maybe lift up the cushions on your couch, see if there's any change in there, and throw it towards us, right? But when you all come together, it allows us to continue to make this show. It allows us to do things like travel down here, have these lights, have microphones, have editing, all the things that go into the production of the show. We couldn't do it without you, and we are so grateful for your support. And we have a lot of great gifts that we can give you in our gratitude, things like coffee mugs, hoodies, sacramentals. You get access to behind-the-scenes content and exclusive Q&As that Ryan and I do. So if you have it, in your budget to support us, look, prayer is always the best, but if you have the ability to support us financially, we really appreciate it. So now the dirt of seminaries. I'm going to just answer questions. You can abstain if the question gets too personal.
All right.
Okay. One of the big things. Do you hate any of the teachers? Do you guys ever have one of the teachers that you just could not stand? You don't have to name names.
I would say hate.
I mean, hate's a strong word. So let me say, most of the professors are just fantastic people and love God and everything else. Not everyone is good at teaching, and sometimes because seminary, in a sense, it's a small, it's a small university. It's a small kind of school.
Yep.
So if someone's not a great teacher, you can't really escape them. So sometimes you kind of have to suffer through that. So there were some. I think they're always trying to get better. But that's it. There was definitely some that were just not my favorites.
Then there were some that were funny. You're just like, wow, this guy's crazy. It's like wild just learning from him.
Right. Yeah. I think there's certain people in seminary who they're just. They could. I don't mean this in a bad way, but they couldn't do anything else. Not because they're not skilled or talented, but it's like it's so perfect for the just sort of the
charism,
the trippiness of his personality. Yeah. So there was, and so you get really good at doing impressions of your teachers. Basically, you're all there, and you're all in it. Yeah. And this is something too that's definitely come up where I know people have brought up as far as like heretical teachers or things of people being punished for being conservative or being theologically like really during our time, there was so many moves being made towards making sure that the seminary was a healthy place theologically, emotionally, spiritually. And praise God for that. And I think that obviously the church went through a lot of pain in the early 2000s and is kind of continuing to be correcting, areas of just whether theologically or emotionally or psychosexually or whatever it is, were just unhealthy things that were happening, or cultures that were growing up. But that was definitely not my experience where there was like I had to hide that I believed in the truths of the Catholic faith or something, which is sometimes kind of some of the horror stories you hear.
Yeah,
from
you
guys
hear a lot of the horror
in 80s
stories.
and 90s.
Yeah, you hear that, and you hear that now. It's like, oh, this seminary, they're very left, they're very liberal, they have a agenda, right?
right.
And was that your guys' experience, or do you know anybody who went to had those experiences?
Yeah, I mean, you could see the remnants of some of that. I think some of it, not a lot, but also you could also see the adjustments that were being made too, as well. So I think when we were in the seminary, it was kind of like a 90-10 type thing, and then, but yeah, I mean. Like explicitly, we were hearing stories of like what this seminary was like 20 years ago, and some of the things that went on, and you're like, how did the church survive that?
Yeah,
right?
you have
Like
seminaries that have reputations as being.
Yeah, I mean, it's just infiltrated
Hotbeds of
by
liberal, whatever, kind of stuff,
like ideologues, and I was very grateful I didn't have to go through that for sure.
Yeah, right. I think it's one of the things that was probably. I mean, it's kind of only in hindsight that I kind of see this, that even professors or formators that ideologically or theologically I might have not agreed with, that they still had a lot to teach me. And I think that's maybe one of the things that probably guys coming in now that you hear this out loud, it's like, oh, because in a sense it's gotten, sort of the dividing lines, liberal, orthodox, conservative, all these sorts of things. A lot of it's now gone to areas of liturgy. It wasn't as strong with liturgy when we were in and out, obviously with the just the liturgy wars within the church and different dioceses and things, where you're a good priest or a bad priest by where you whether or not you celebrate the Latin Mass. Which hopefully any guy that's stepping into a place of seminary, and I was some of that, but definitely had a lot of work to do, is saying I'm actually stepping into serving the church because I'm in love with Jesus Christ, not because like I had this change I want to make in the church, or I see this
coming in with an agenda.
Like this agenda, whether it's a more traditional Orthodox agenda or a more liberal agenda. Because in a sense, like guys that kind of have that, when I hear them talk about it now or see write-ups about this, it's almost the exact same thing that guys were coming into the seminaries with in the 60s and 70s. Were like, I'm going to change the church to be more liberal, to be more sort of thing. That was kind of the marching orders, or sort of the
cultural,
the cultural, countercultural thing that was happening in the 60s and 70s. And then I think there was a lot of maybe some good things that came of that, but then a lot of negative things that came from that. And now guys maybe are on the other side of the political or ideological spectrum, but still coming at that. Instead of saying, we want to serve Jesus Christ, we're in love with him, we want every single man, woman, and child on planet Earth to encounter the saving love of Jesus in and through his church. Instead of saying, like, I want people to go to this type of mass in this type of way.
I imagine a lot of these young men have been influenced and inspired online in echo chambers, and they're coming in, they're like, I'm going in, I'm going to be the savior of the church.
Right.
I'm going to come in and, by the time that I make it through my 40 years and I rise up to the Pope, I'm going to solve all the problems. And I think that's probably the wrong mindset, because you got to go in with a mindset of service, right? And
it's okay to have grand ideas. There's something beautiful about that. There's something beautiful about young people. If you're in your 18, 19, 20, early 20s, that you have this desire to do something great, to impact and affect the church. And it always has to mature, though. And I think that's a good way to look at it. For myself, I definitely had those things. It wasn't like necessarily like a conservative sort of thing, but it was sort of, was very much John Paul II influenced. We're gonna evangelize people, and we're gonna do it. And once we get dynamic preaching, then everybody
needs to read theology of the body. That's right. That's my parish is gonna look like little patty ones. But there's an archbishop that lived with us in the rectory that was retired and had some mental decline. And I used to always play bocce ball outside with one of my favorite teachers. We'd just hang out, and he'd just sweat all the time, and like he was just crazy. And we'd talk, and we'd have really good philosophy talks with some of the guys who are out there playing with us by that tree. And Bishop Noonan, who was the rector at the time, had trouble putting him to bed. He was combative, like physically combative with him.
The Archbishop was.
Yeah, the Archbishop was. And so I used to go in there. Somehow I was just like right there. I was just like, hey, you come help, so I'd help. And, I could see that I had I was the whisperer, like, all right, now take your shoes off, he just didn't want to have anything to do, and I understand that, now, caring for elderly but yeah, it became a thing, where it's like, if I had trouble, Ryan can help me out.
Mm-hmm. So that was a great witness for us too, as far as any illusions of grandeur within the church. Like, well, one day I might be a bishop. You realize like, oh, here's the Archbishop living with us.
Yeah.
And you could see the decline. Realize like, oh, this is where it all goes. Like whatever importance he might have had.
Yeah.
He's now getting Ryan Delacrosse trying to talk him into
taking his shoes off, keeping him away from the rector.
He wants to go to get some more ice cream. Like, no, you already had ice cream. You can't do that. Yep. So there, praise God. What a great
just
lesson for us.
A bunch of little things like that just kind of made it very human too as well.
Yeah. You ever see a guy and say, this dude has no business being here? This guy's not going to make it?
Absolutely.
You could tell?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How could you tell?
Man, I mean, usually it's in a place of despising anything and everything. Like, like if and maybe for whatever reason, usually there's something internal, but somebody who just despises the program, despises the people, the formators, the other guys, and just say like, oh man, this is because we're being formed to be priests, and so you're just going to be with people, and if you don't love people, it's not going to work. And you're in close with people in seminary for a lot of years, so all that's going to come to the surface.
I don't think I would have done well with that.
Yeah,
no,
because there's no one type of personality for guys to become priests. There's no one type of like this is it. It's across the spectrum as far as just introverts and extroverts and gifts and talents, and it's really kind of
finding your spot, like finding where that all fits in, right? Yes. In the church.
So it's never just like, oh, this guy's too much this, so he can't be a priest. It's more like, all right, if it's a guy who doesn't love Jesus, doesn't care about prayer, is closed off to formation, is closed off to just being part of a community, then that's when you say, all right, maybe it's a different call. Maybe it's being like a hermit or something, which is a great vocation within the church too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if there's someone out there watching who is considering, what would be some next steps? What would be maybe the next step if they're just considering or even thinking about the priesthood or feeling maybe called or questions? What should they do next?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think first and foremost, start praying. Become a man of prayer. Become a man who knows Jesus. And I would say the best place to really dive into prayer is the Gospels. Open up Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Read through them again. Keep going there. Daily Mass is a great thing. Obviously, Sunday Mass, if you're not practicing the sacramental life of the church, start going to confession regularly, going to Sunday Mass, but maybe upping that to starting to go to Mass during the week, going to adoration, having time of silence. But then I would talk to a priest about it. Again, your local parish priest or your vocations director is a great resource, and just being able to say like, oh, I do see this in you. Especially if they know you or they're getting to know you, they can say like, all right, I'm seeing some gifts and talents. Or they can say like, all right, there's a lot of things that are really inconsistent with this, and maybe that needs to be addressed before you take this next step. I've had people who are just in a place of profound disorder saying like, oh, I'm thinking about being a priest. And you're like, all right, well, there's probably some other things we need to work on first before we kind of take that step. Because the church is not going to call someone to the seminary unless they've got not perfect, but at least a solid foundation of being a disciple, of life being in order. And because then before you even get to the seminary, there are going to be psychological evaluations. There's going to be a lot of questions, and it's good if the church knows you. The church wants to know you before they're going to send you off to seminary.
Yep. And then how do you talk to your parents? Because I hear that a lot too, is that a lot of parents are like, I pray for vocations every day. I support the vocations. I support the seminary financially. We need more priests because we need access to the sacraments, but not my son.
Not my son.
Not my son, right? Your son.
I want a grandchild.
I want grandchildren.
It comes from that.
Right.
Yeah.
So how did you guys tell your parents? And because I know that's got to be challenging.
I'll let you go first, Ryan.
What did your mom say? What did Ralph say?
My mom was very supportive, overly supportive, kind of threw me off the fence and said, go get it now. Like, stop calling me with this garbage. And then I told my dad, and again, this, like, to my dad's sort of benefit or credit in this situation, the church was going through a lot, and it was on the news every day.
Oh, yeah.
And to hear that from your son, like, just kind of randomly, which is what happened, because I think spiritually he was never really like, hey, you're going to mass, you're doing it, like, I don't think that was like kind of our relationship. And we were just at dinner, and I was like, hey, I'm going to go to the seminary and leaving in a month. And you could tell he was a little off, and he's just like, you don't have to do this. I was like, I know I don't have to do this. Like, I want to do it. And I've been praying. So there was a disconnect with like the life of prayer that you were just talking about, and how I was going to approach my father. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just got to tell him, like, and that's it, and like, whatever, and again, it's not bad. I love my father. I mean, just one of the greatest guys in my life, but that was just not the thing. So I think it's different for everybody, right? I mean, some fathers are really engaged and some mothers aren't, some fathers don't care and some do, and, in different ways. And so I think it's just, prayer and discernment and how that should be done.
How'd you tell your girlfriend?
Let's see. I didn't have one.
Okay, that was a trick question.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'd already broken up by the point. So I think one of the things that comes up a lot, definitely came up with my parents, is this this thought that, like, okay, you're doing this because you're making a big sacrifice. You're making a big sacrifice, like you're sacrificing for the church, and that's definitely, obviously a huge part of it. But that's not like why I was doing it. I wasn't going to the seminary. I'm like, oh, what's the hardest thing I can do? It was I was doing it because I'd fallen in love with Jesus. I was following. I already decided to follow him, which to me is that's already death, right? That you've already decided to, as Bonhoeffer says, when the Lord calls man, he bids him come and die. Like, that. So if I'm already following Jesus with my life, and he's calling me this direction, it kind of makes sense to at least explore it. But I think it's neat in that the process of seminary with your parents, sometimes siblings, because they're all going to be different places, and that's okay. You can't, like you were saying with your prayer experiences, you can't download that into your dad's brain, into your mom's brain, and your siblings. Like they have to go through it for themselves. And I think it was cool for my siblings in their own ways, as I went through my time of seminary formation, and now years and years as a priest, that they've kind of been able to see it and appreciate it and see how I've come alive in it. And even the challenging parts, even the parts that have been difficult. You definitely get that sense where guys, they're like, well, I don't want to share any of like the struggles with my family, because they're already thinking I need to, that this is a bad idea. But it's sort of like, it's sort of just recognizing, this is actually what you've chosen to do and God has called you to do. And this is where you come alive. And this is actually for your happiness too. And I think, your parents want you to be happy family. Generally. They want you to be happy, and it's when they can see that actually happening and then through the response to the vocation, it's great, and it is a huge blessing to the family.
It is. Yeah, I've seen that in several priests' families' lives where them seeing it's real and then wondering about it, and it's like a vacuum of conversion in families.
And it's cool now as I've got 24 nieces and nephews.
So another one 2 weeks ago?
24 was just born. Wow. So shout out to Nixon, Elias, Ellsburn.
So your parents aren't missing out on grandkids.
Yeah, no, they got the grandkids taken care of. But but now seeing some of my nephews as they're getting older and starting to get into college, seeing them to ask the question and discern, it's really cool. And obviously without any pressure saying that you have to do this in order for us to love you, but just like that this is a viable option. Hopefully I demonstrate that to them when they see my life, that they see like, all right, priesthood is actually can be a happy, fulfilled human being and love life. So cool. I think I've demonstrated that to them. So
I think so. Everyone, that's what people say about you for sure. All right. Well, that's a little bit about the seminary, because look, there's a lot of people ask, a lot of people think about this. And if you're out there and you're watching this now and you're thinking about the seminary, like Father Michael said, go talk to your priest, go talk to your parents, go talk to a vocations director. You're not signing up. You're not going there, and you're not going to sign a piece of paper, and the Pope's going to put golden, cages around you and take you off to the priest factory. It's not like that. It's really a long discernment process, and if it's in your head, explore that.
Yeah.
Now, before we go, again, if you're watching this, make sure you click the like and subscribe button. Takes a second. Easiest way for you to help us out. If you want to get that Hallow app, you can go to CatholicTalkShow.com/Hallow. Download it for free. You can go check out Everything Catholic at everythingcatholic.com and see all the great things they have on there. You can support the show at CatholicTalkShow.com/Patreon. And if you want to travel with us this year as we go on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land, you can go to CatholicTalkShow.com/Holy Land to learn more. All right, former seminarian, good episode.
Good episode.
All right.
We'll see you next week. Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.
God bless.
All right.